Welcome to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannan, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. Ross Brannan is a financial advisor who knows it's not just about your teeth. He helps dental practice owners protect and maximize today's cash flow to plan for tomorrow's cash needs. Find him at rossbrannan.com. On the show, he brings together experts to help dental professionals looking to make smart money decisions to grow their income, turn their retirement goals into reality, and improve their lives. And now, here's your host, Ross Brannan.
Welcome to the show. My guest today is Monica Borris. Monica is a newly retired dentist from Denver, Colorado, with a very, very interesting story. Monica, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Ross, for inviting me to your podcast.
Sure.
Excited to be here.
So let's jump right in. You have a little bit different background story than most of our listeners. Tell everyone where you're from and how you got to the United States.
So my name is Monica Borris, and I am originally from Brazil. I was a dentist in Brazil, and then I moved to the U.S. to study. And I went through an international program for international dentists, and here I am, so 22 years later.
So you were practicing for how long in Brazil?
10 years.
And then when you came to the U.S., how long did you have to study and go back to school for to start practicing in the U.S.?
So the program is a 2-year program here in Denver, Colorado.
Okay. And then after that 2-year program, you were able to just jump right in and become a U.S. licensed dentist?
Yes, I was. Although I took the longer route, I did 1 year of GPR residency. And then also I did a master program in implantology in Frankfurt, Germany, at the same time that I was practicing. Okay,
wow. So you sold your practice a year ago at a relatively young age. And as we were talking, that wasn't your original intent. Talk about what motivated you to sell or change your mind to sell it because you're 55 or you sold at 55 years old, correct?
I was 54.
54. And you didn't sell it for $100 million to some DSO. You sold it for whatever you sold it for, which I'm sure you did great on it. But it wasn't like a massive, like, oh my gosh, they're offering me so much money that I have to sell. It was a completely different rationale. So talk a little bit about that.
I sold the practice to my associate. When she joined the practice, she did have an intention to be my partner. And then throughout the process of her working for me, we decided that once I exited because I got disability and I was diagnosed with cervical, carpal tunnel, and lumbar issues. They were no repairable just by exercise. I would require extensive surgery. And then at the process of transition with my new associate, she worked for me for 1.5 years, so she was very familiar with the practice. So in my opinion, for a business to be sold to a person that is very interested in keeping the practice as it is with the same patient, same quality of care, it was important for me to get to know that person. So no, I was not interested in selling to a DSO. I really wanted to have someone that would come in and then get to know the practice, get to know the patients, the staff, and then continue with the legacy.
I think that's really wise to make sure you know the person. A lot of people don't. It doesn't always go well. So let's talk a little bit about your disability. Obviously, through our conversation, you were very, very wise and you purchased individual disability insurance early on in your dental career. But whenever anyone purchases disability insurance, I mean, I own it myself, no one expects to actually use it. And so talk about what the process was like to all of a sudden start having health challenges and then walking down that road, because I'm sure it didn't happen over a week. I'm sure this happened over months, if not years.
Right. So the process that, it was very important to have disability, and I highly recommended everybody to have it because it's going to happen.
And real quick, let me interrupt you.
Yes.
I know 4 people on disability claim. And if you met them and shook their hand, you would never know they are on disability claim. Most disabilities, you're not in a wheelchair. A vast majority of them, people don't realize that. It's can you do the material and substantial duties of your occupation? But I digress. I interrupted you. Carry on.
Yes. So it wasn't just that. I mean, it's very important. I highly recommend everybody to have it in any kind of profession that you use in your body. That, I mean, if you're a surgeon, if you're a dentist, if you are physical therapy, whatever, but it's very important to have it. When I purchased my policy with the Great West through the ADA, never in a million years I thought that I was going to be using it. One thing that was, when the time came that I had to face it, to me, it's important also that you have a healthy practice, regardless if you are going to retire because you just want to retire or because you're going to retire through disability. I think that, the health of your practice, of your profession, it's extremely important, financially speaking. Otherwise, getting to disability might be a big, burden for you, depending how much you have on your claim or on your payment. I mean, you have to have not that as your main objective when you buy your policy.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So how long, when did you first start seeing symptoms? And then when did you get to the point where you actually had to file a claim?
Okay. So the first time that I had a car accident in end of 2017, mine, just fender bender, and then
bender.
And then nothing to it, right? The regular x-rays, everything was fine. But then they started saying that even on that time, I had some cervical issues, but talking to all the dentists, everybody has some sort of spine problem. Apparently, after 10 years of practicing dentistry, I read that in an article, you start showing some physical, challenges. So based on that, I started doing a little bit more, diligent exercises, physical therapy. And then 2018, that's when I actually started seeing more severe, more permanent damage on the cervical symptoms, as getting the hands numb, the severe neck pain, severe lower back pain. And then that gradually added up to, in 2020, after many consults and different exercises, physical therapy, changes of treatment, we decided to consult with the disability insurance, and I ended up with partial disability. And I was in partial disability for a while, for probably almost a month.
How much were you working when you were on partial disability?
How much I was working? I was working 3 days a week. And then gradually I went for 2 days a week, and I stayed for 2 days a week for the longest time. Probably over a year, I stayed for 2 days a week, full 2 days.
Okay.
And then it came to a point that not even the 2 days, the remaining 5 days of the week were not enough to rest and to be good to work again those 2 days. That's when we decided that at that point, you have to make a decision, because you might get to a disability that goes beyond the point that even if you stop working, it's going to affect your life. So that was a turning point for me.
So I have a client. He's a physician. He's not a dentist. Mm-hmm. And he called me last week and he said he is probably going to file a claim because he has a sudden hearing loss. Mm-hmm. And it's affecting him pretty dramatically. And what's interesting about this guy had some low back issues, some disc issues, and he applied for coverage probably 4 years ago for additional coverage. And they put an exclusion on his low back, and he didn't want to do that. So he didn't do it because he's like, if I get disabled, it's going to be my low back. And the reality is he's now disabled. It's not his low back, it's his ears. Mm. And so many times what we think is going to cause a disability is not going to cause a disability. It's something else, something we can't think. It's typically not an injury. It's more of an illness than it is an injury. Obviously, in your case, it's an injury. And so it's interesting to see. And of course, a lot of people know that with individual disability, dentists have a relatively high claim rate. And so premiums can be expensive, and females, disability is more expensive than males. So it's really important to get it early as opposed to later. I've met 50-year-olds who don't have disability and they get disability, and it's definitely a higher premium for sure. Now, talk about the peace of mind that having the disability insurance gave you.
I cannot even start telling you. It was such a great decision. I know that right in the beginning of my career here in the US, I am very fortunate to have met, more experienced professionals in the area that would give advices. And one of them was a great one, which was to purchase the Great West from the ADA and then explain to me how important it was to have the clause for the true own occupation. So for that, that I, if I could not work as a dentist anymore, and then you still cover even if you, able to teach or to do other things that are not related to the practice of, clinician, dentistry. So to me, it was, I cannot even tell you the peace of mind. It's completely, it's another story. I never expected, my initial plan, especially because I started working here in the US in a later age, my plan was to work at least I was 62 years old, at least. Pushing to the 65 if I felt that I was fine. I was enjoying what I was doing. I thought I was good what I was doing. I was still really working to learn new things, to share. I love the interaction with the patients, which is something that's what I miss the most. But to have to come to a condition in a situation that, you do have a way to take care of yourself, you're fully disabled, and then you have some income. My policy is going to pay me until I am 62 years old. So I have 7 years to cover. And it's night and day. I cannot tell you how much that is comforting knowing that I have that.
Well, it's such a big deal. And obviously you use the Great West, and there's tons of other companies out there. Some are better than others, but it really comes down to the contract language. And there's certain riders and benefits that you can add on there. But everyone's situation is different. So so there shouldn't be cookie cutter advice here, but it is a big deal to really make sure that people are, taken care of, and they're kind of gotten this kind of dialed in, if you will, because we live in a world where crap happens. We have auto insurance, we have homeowners insurance, we have life insurance. Our biggest financial resource is our ability to earn an income. And so protecting that is key. And I think you were really wise to do that, because the reality is, for every one of you, there's 50 people who bought it and never used it. And
yes.
They're like, well, what happened? But when you look at the amount of what you're insuring, it's such a big deal. It is such a big deal. And so I think it's really wise. And for 7 years of benefit for you, that's life-changing.
It is. Absolutely.
And in many cases, it's tax-free, so that's even better. So, as we kind of wind down, as someone who's had a lot of experience, and you've traveled the world, you've lived international, and you grew up in a different country, what advice would you give to a young dentist coming out of school or starting a practice or something like that?
I have a lot. You have to
go for it. Let's hear it.
You have to time it on that one. First of all, my biggest philosophy, and doesn't have anything to do with money, is people come before profit. If you're going to start your career as a dentist, people come before profit. That was for me. It worked for me. Okay. My practice was built in relationships. And I always wanted that. That was my biggest dream. And then I can say that I fulfilled that. When you want to take care of your business, you should always save more than spend.
For sure.
Live and the reason that I say that, it's something that I probably wouldn't affirm that with the same conviction that I have right now, like 10 years ago. And the reason is exactly because of the disability. When you start working your practice, make sure that you have a disability insurance, that you cover your business insurance, and then everything that you're going to invest in your practice, have a plan of the return of your investment, and only spend a portion of it. Especially in the beginning, be very, very thrifty with yourself. Get your the money that you have to survive and then to pay your bills and to grow. But watch your practice, because initially the first year of your practice is not going to determine how the practice is going to be in 5 years. But that's why you have to invest. You have to invest time. I invest a lot of time in my practice. I bought my practice from a retiring dentist, and he did an awesome job doing the transition. I'm very, very grateful to him and to his staff that stayed and then helped me build up what the practice was. Once I sold it, I was able to grow the practice at least 10% every year.
That's fantastic.
Sometimes, yes, and sometimes a little bit more than that. But I think that part of that was because I'll do any investment that I did in the practice, it had to have a reason for it. Not just because it looked pretty or just because, everybody was using, but it had to have a reason, had to have an end to it, And then I made mistakes, tons. I could write a book about all the mistakes I made. Some of them that, keeps you awake at night. I'm like, what the heck I was thinking? But then you learn with that. You learn with that. And then the other advice I would give is surround yourself with a nice community of other professionals. Don't isolate yourself. Be the kind of dentist that you can call somebody and then change, information and then ask for help. Or so you can be open to help other people, other dentists. I think it's paramount for anywhere that you are, that you create this community, this relationship, and then pay attention to what's going on outside that might influence and cause impact in your practice. Could be what's happening in the city, when the community is growing or the community is shrinking, things like that, that it's going to give you a opportunity to bond with your community. And then because I was a small practice, I was just one doctor practice, I always had the one-on-one relationship with the patient, of talking, not being rushed, you have to think about this too. When I started working here in the US, I was already 40 years old, and I was not 25 anymore. I was not just like getting out of dental school. So after all these years learning people and learning the mechanics of practicing relationship with the patient and with the staff, to me, I was in a very comfortable position that I could sit in the office and talk to the patient, get to know them. Sometimes you learn way more that way than what they write down on the medical history. Some things like that. Take the time, and because the profit will come.
Well, Monica, that is great wisdom and great advice, and your perspective, I think, is something to be valued. I really appreciate you joining us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've been listening to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannan.
This has been another episode of Financial Flossing with Ross Brannan, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. If you liked what you heard, consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. For more on Ross Brannan, visit rossbrannan.com.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by PAS, Guardian, or North Florida Financial, and opinions stated are their own. Ross is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, PAS, OSJ, 3664 Coolidge Court, Tallahassee, Florida, 32311, 850-562-9075. Securities, products, and advisory services offered through PAS, member FINRA, SIPC, financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. PAS is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. North Florida Financial is not an affiliate or subsidiary of PAS or Guardian. Arkansas Insurance License Number 16139032. California Insurance License Number 0L10073. 2022-147-262 expires 11/24.